All right, so we're diving deep today into how Howard University, like, totally revamped their assessment process.
Yeah.
They brought in storytelling, to really, like, understand student learning outcomes.
It's pretty fascinating how they did it.
I know, right? It's not something you hear every day.
What's really interesting is Howard's not your typical university.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a historically black university founded way back in the 1800s
Wow.
to educate formerly enslaved people.
Oh, wow.
So that history, is a huge part of their identity.
Makes sense.
And it really shapes their whole approach to assessment.
So, like, picture this.
Okay.
They have to prove how effective they are as a university to this accreditation team.
Right?
And this is right smack in the middle of a global pandemic.
Talk about pressure.
Oh, my gosh.
It was a visit from the Middle States Commission on Higher Education.
You're kidding.
But instead of letting the pandemic, totally derail their assessment plans,
Yeah.
they decided to embrace it.
Really?
Yeah, they saw it as an opportunity to, document how everyone adapted,
Oh.
faculty, staff, students, everybody.
Wow.
It became less about checking off boxes
Yeah.
and more about capturing, a really crucial chapter in their story.
Interesting. So they had this whole framework, though.
Right.
They called it storying and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds a little jargony.
Yeah, it does a bit. But the concept itself is actually pretty simple.
Okay.
Think of it this way. The pandemic, that's the story.
With the setting.
Yeah, exactly. The backdrop for everything else.
Okay, got it. So then what's story?
Storying is like weaving a tapestry.
Okay.
Instead of looking at assessment data as these isolated points,
Right.
they wanted to connect them
Okay.
and create a more complete narrative.
I see.
They moved away from that kind of checklist approach
Yeah.
and encouraged departments to share their experiences.
Oh, cool.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Like the whole picture.
Yeah, a more holistic view.
So less did you hit this specific target? And more. Tell me what happened. What you learned.
Precisely.
How you grew from it.
Yeah, they even started using different data sources.
Like what?
Well, for example, presentation slide decks.
Oh, interesting.
They were full of context and insights that you
Ah.
might miss with traditional assessments.
Wow. I never thought of slide decks as data.
You see, data's everywhere.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But what about this storytelling piece?
Storytelling is all about bringing everyone into the story,
Okay.
making them part of the assessment process.
You mean like getting people involved?
Exactly, invested in it.
Interesting.
So Howard involved faculty committees in telling their assessment journey.
During that big visit.
Yeah, the Middle States visit.
Makes sense.
But here's the really cool part.
Okay.
They brought the students into the narrative too.
The students.
How?
They had a student essay contest.
The contest.
Yeah.
What was it about?
Students had to reflect on where they really learned and achieved Howard's institutional learning outcomes.
Those are the key skills. Yeah, the knowledge they want every graduate to have.
I get it.
They ask them, where did your aha moments happen?
Ooh. I bet those essays were amazing.
They were.
Learning happens everywhere, right? Not just in class.
Exactly. And the essays showed that students shared these powerful stories.
About.
Learning and growth, things that happen in student affairs, athletics, community engagement, even on-campus jobs.
Wow.
It revealed how deeply Howard's mission is woven into student life.
So it wasn't just feel-good stories.
Right.
It was actual data.
Valuable data. They provided these rich, qualitative insights into how students were developing competencies.
So they learned stuff in unexpected ways.
Sometimes, yeah. Ways that traditional assessments might have missed.
That's incredible. It sounds like the contest gave students a real voice.
It did. And it showed them how their experience is connected to those bigger learning goals.
Okay, so we've got story, the setting,
Right?
storying, weaving it all together,
Mhm.
and storytelling, bringing everyone in. But how did this actually make their assessment process better?
That's the key question, isn't it? It allowed them to go beyond simple metrics
Oh,
and capture a more nuanced understanding of student learning.
I see.
But there's another layer to this story.
Oh, really? Let's hear it.
Remember how we were talking about how Howard was going through some technology changes?
Oh, yeah?
At the same time as all this?
With like the new systems and everything?
Yeah, they were implementing a new learning management system, Canvas,
Mm-hmm.
and a new student information system, Bison Hub.
Right.
Yeah.
So like on top of everything else.
Yeah, it was a lot going on.
Did those systems affect their ability to gather all the student stories?
Well, there were definitely some bumps in the road.
Like what?
especially with the transition to Canvas.
Oh, yeah. What had
Some
to occur?
technical glitches,
Oh.
particularly when programs needed to access course evaluation data.
Oh, man, that's a pain.
It was kind of like trying to bake a cake
Okay.
while the oven's still preheating.
Not ideal.
Not at all.
But it sounds like they worked through it.
Oh, they did. And those challenges actually helped them in a way.
Yeah.
They identified areas where they could improve their data management processes.
So a learning experience.
Yeah, for sure. It was a learning curve, but they navigated it.
Okay, so they adapted. Kept the focus on gathering those insights.
Exactly. What about Bison Hub?
Yeah. Did that new student information system cause any issues?
Interestingly enough, the full launch of Bison Hub
Yeah?
actually happened after the accreditation visit.
So it wasn't a factor yet.
Not really, no.
Well,
But it's worth noting that Howard chose to roll it out gradually.
that makes sense.
Yeah, testing it with a few courses and programs first,
Smart move.
before going campus-wide.
Like dipping your toes in the water before jumping in
Exactly.
so they could work out any kinks.
Yeah, and ensure a smoother transition.
Good thinking.
Yeah.
But with all this focus on storytelling,
Yeah,
did they ditch quantitative data altogether?
that's a good question. Because numbers still matter,
Oh, for sure.
especially when you're measuring student learning outcomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What did they do about the herd data?
They recognize that both qualitative and quantitative data are important. They saw them as partners, working together to tell a more complete story.
So not throwing out the spreadsheets just yet.
No, not at all. Think of it this way.
Okay.
The quantitative data, the numbers, they provide the framework.
Okay.
They offer those objective measures of performance.
Right.
But the qualitative data, the stories, they add depth and context.
It's like looking at a map versus actually exploring the terrain.
Exactly. Both are valuable, but together,
You get the full picture.
precisely.
Yeah.
So how do you think this played out in their presentations to the accreditors?
Oh, good question. What did they do?
Remember those faculty committees we talked about?
Yeah.
They weren't just sharing heartwarming stories.
Oh, okay.
They were using data to back up their claims.
So they had the receipts.
They did.
Yeah.
They had the numbers to show that their approach was working.
Data and stories.
Right.
Working together.
In perfect harmony.
That's impressive.
And they weren't afraid to weave personal experiences and reflections into their presentations.
I bet that made them more engaging.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about connecting with your audience on a human level.
Right, not just hitting them with facts and figures.
It's like that saying, people will forget what you said.
But they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Exactly. And that's the power of storytelling.
Creating those emotional connections.
Yeah, it makes information more memorable.
More impactful.
Absolutely. So if we want to use this approach
Mm-hmm.
in our own work,
Yeah.
it's not about choosing data or stories. It's
Yeah.
about finding ways to integrate them.
Using both to understand what's really going on.
Exactly. And recognizing that assessment is a conversation,
Okay.
an ongoing process of learning and reflection.
That makes sense.
That can lead to real improvements.
But here's a thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about Howard's approach.
Right.
But how much did their identity as an HBCU influence their storytelling?
That's a fascinating question.
Did it affect the kinds of stories they shared?
Or how they presented them.
Yeah. Let's explore that next.
Howard being an HBCU, that's a huge part of their story.
Yeah, totally.
It's woven into everything they do.
For sure.
And their approach to storytelling and assessment is no different.
Makes sense.
Remember we mentioned their goal of reaching 12,000 students by 2024?
Yeah.
Well, they actually blew past that.
Really?
Yeah, they reached almost 14,000 students.
Wow. That's incredible.
It really speaks to their legacy and their appeal.
Definitely. But that kind of growth has got to come with some challenges too, right?
You're absolutely right. How do you maintain quality and make sure every student has a meaningful experience?
Right, when you're growing that fast.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's where assessment becomes even more important.
I see.
Howard knew that to keep that legacy of excellence going, they needed a really solid assessment process.
So
One that could capture all those diverse needs and experiences of their students.
it was about more than just what they were learning in the classroom.
Right. It was about assessing the whole Howard experience.
Everything.
Academics, student life, community engagement, campus, culture.
The whole shebang.
Exactly. And understanding how all those pieces fit together.
To help students succeed.
Precisely. Remember how we talked about their emphasis on program review?
Yeah.
That was all about connecting the dots.
Between what?
What students were learning, how effective the programs were, and how resources were being used.
So it really shows how assessment goes way beyond just numbers.
It really does.
It's about understanding people's lives,
Yeah.
their goals, their contributions.
And acknowledging that historical and cultural context.
Right, because Howard's story is one of resilience,
Yeah.
determination, and a commitment to social justice.
Absolutely. And those values are everywhere at Howard.
They even show up in their approach to assessment,
It's pretty inspiring to see how they embraced all those challenges.
especially during the pandemic.
Yeah, they use them as a chance to reflect, adapt, and grow.
They didn't shy away from the tough questions,
Nope. They examine their practices.
and they did it all while honoring their unique identity and mission.
That's right. They didn't try to fit into some cookie-cutter model.
They forged their own path,
They created an approach that truly reflected who they are
what they believe in.
and the power of their story.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
We've learned so much about how Howard transformed assessment.
bringing in storytelling.
Yeah, creating a more engaging, insightful, and meaningful way to understand student learning,
It's amazing how narratives can do that.
shed light on complex issues,
Forge connections.
and drive real change.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up, here's a question for you to ponder.
Okay.
How could you use storytelling to enhance assessment in your own work?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What are your stories of learning growth and impact?
Take some time to think about it.
Yeah, the journey doesn't end here,
It's an ongoing process.
of discovery and exploration.
Who knows? Your stories might just inspire a whole new way of thinking about assessment.
That's the power of a good story.
It really is.